Hi, I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. And the first thing I want to say is thank you. Recently, it has come to my attention via the research I do to understand my podcast audience better that I have moved beyond an audience that is only my family. You see, I now have 14 subscribers. I don't know you all, but if I did, I would shake your hand. And if you're wondering why that sounded like Ron Swanson, it's because I have a mustache now. And I feel like Ron Swanson. Which is why today we're going to talk about patriotism. Yes, love of country, love of the country you live in. You may, of course, wonder why I said love of the country you live in and not specifically love of the United States of America. It is because I am of the opinion that one must love the country they live in or one must move. Why is that? There's a lot of reasons. Some would say that it's, borders don't exist and that we are all human beings living in a world of, okay. Technically speaking, yes, we are all one people. We all are citizens of the planet Earth. It is true. However, we have found over time, and this is the best way we have to manage ourselves as human beings right now, that the simplest way to take care of ourselves, to take care of our fellow man in terms of governance, in terms of public safety, in terms of public resources, is management through governmental structures and management through governmental structures within national borders. Okay. We've found that over time. How have we found that? How have we determined that? Well, we found and determined that through a long process known as the empires. For all you fans of one world government, we tried it. It didn't work. It was violent. It was horrible. It was exploitative in many ways. Not in many ways, pretty much just exclusively exploitative unless you happen to live in the seat of power of the empire. And for those of you saying, well, a one world government would be different, no, it wouldn't. Why? Well, because as the Bible says, human beings are broken. We exist in a state and varying levels of brokenness. Simply put, human beings are not good at managing ourselves. What we are very good at, and what separates us, I think, in many ways from animals, is that we are able to, with a little encouragement, recognize our own limits. I'm very good at managing myself and my resources. I am not very good at managing John Smith's resources down the street on his behalf, unless I specifically take an interest in doing that for him with his permission. And even then, I'm not as good at doing it as he would do it because I'm not managing it exactly to his preferences. I'm managing it to what I believe his preferences are or should be. What we have with government is, at least in the United States, we use a representative form of government. And that is a method of government where we elect representatives to speak on our behalf in the seat of power to run the government to what we believe the major issues should be, what should be taken care of in the moment. It's not perfect. The country system is far, far from perfect. Don't get me wrong. The United States, I'll focus on the United States just because I happen to live here. I happen to be a citizen of this country, and I happen to love this country. I also happen to recognize the flaws in the country. For example, we have a two-party system, which, in terms of data and political science, technically speaking, it means that, you have a greater chance of being represented in government because, while multiple parties, while in like a parliamentary system where you have 6 or 7 parties, it's very likely that if you're a member of that 5th or 6th party down, you don't have any seats in government, so you have no representation. In our system, in the United States system, because there's really only two parties, those parties swallow up the smaller parties, and they represent and they operate as sort of part of that group. And I apologize, I have a little bit of a stuffy nose tonight. So technically speaking, quote unquote, you have more representation for individuals. However, the weaknesses of that system are apparent at this moment when you have not enough of one party or the other in charge, and you have no or a limited ability to operate in a bipartisan manner. It's some stuffy nose again. Manner, meaning complex issues that require a lot of votes have a hard time getting through at the moment, and that's tough. Border issues, I think, come up as a number one problem where, regardless of what you think of the immigration issue, it is something that needs to be addressed because both sides, and actually both sides, agree that it needs to be addressed. The thing is, neither side agrees on the solution. Normally, in this system, you would come to a bipartisan agreement where both sides reach a compromise. That's not happening right now because you have extremes on both sides. And look, both sides have extremes. If you like the extreme of one side, that doesn't mean it's not an extreme. It means it's just an extreme that you think is helpful, and that's fine. You may think that it's necessary to have a far left extreme end of the Democratic Party. If you think that, that's fine. That's a debate we can have. I don't know why we would have that debate on a show that's only 10 minutes long and we wouldn't get anywhere. But that's a debate we can have, and we can engage with that. I'm just saying, when you have two sides that are very extreme, it's very hard to bring them to the middle because the compromise process that normally would pull two center left, center right parties into the center, it pulls them from the extremes, basically 2 steps this way, 2 steps that way, and you still don't get an agreement. That system is still better than an empire system where you're attempting to manage massive amounts of territory and you really get no voice. There's just no way you can get a voice because as much as we have instant communication, that's an overwhelming amount of communication to try and organize. Human beings do have limits, and we can recognize those limits without insulting ourselves. Now, will better systems develop? Yeah, absolutely. Human beings are constantly evolving, and things may change in the future. For the next, I'd say 200 years, I don't see things changing right now because organizing and moving resources in an equitable manner, which is what we're sort of worried about with the country system, there isn't a better way to do it. Now, what you're looking at around the world is you're looking at the failure of individual countries. And the failure of individual countries does have to do with interference from other countries. So countries that refuse to respect the sanctity of the country system. And we've been doing it for a while now. There are reasons why we violate another country's sanctity at times. For example, when we went to look for Al-Qaeda, whatever the proper pronunciation of that horrible terrorist group is, in Afghanistan, we went to look for Osama bin Laden. Why? Because Osama bin Laden orchestrated the 9/11 terrorist attacks, which is weird to talk about in such a manner because we're finally reaching an age where, like my group, the millennial generation, we grew up with that. That was a fundamental forming point for us. Kind of, sort of. Gen Alpha, which is apparently a thing now, it's an event in a history book, similar to World War II for most millennials. Like, it happened, it's there, but, it's a point on a test. It's weird for us because we lived it. It's not weird for them because it's in a history book. They have plenty of other tragedies that will happen in their lifetime. Let's leave them alone and not make fun of them. This was a somewhat disorganized and stuffy 10 minutes with Nick. If you enjoyed it, drop me a follow. Join my 14 subscribers on the channel. If you don't want to join the 14 subscribers, that's fine. I'm not going to make you go to my Amazon wish list and buy me something. I don't have an Amazon wish list because I'm not going to beg you for things. I refuse. I won't do it because I actually also have a job and I really podcast just for the sake of my brain. Thank you for listening to my ramblings. I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. Have a great night.